For decades, we've been hammered with this one simple rule. A calorie is a calorie. But if it's really that simple, why is it so incredibly hard for so many of us? Okay, let's really get into this, because the latest science is telling us our bodies are running a way more sophisticated program than just simple math.
So, picture this. You've counted every single calorie. You ate exactly what the plan said. But then, an hour later, that all too familiar feeling creeps back in. You're still hungry. It's this super frustrating cycle, right? Well, it turns out the problem isn't your willpower. It's the whole premise we've been sold.
And that's because, and this is the core idea we're going to unpack, a calorie just isn't a calorie. Where that calorie comes from and what form it's in can totally change how your body uses it, how full you feel, and even, get this, how many of those calories you actually absorb.
So, our investigation here starts, well, not in the stomach, but actually in your mouth. Yeah, the very first signals your body gets about food have this huge impact on your metabolism, way before digestion really kicks into gear.
Okay, this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. On one side, you've got solid food. It sits in your stomach, gets broken down, and is released nice and slow. But then you look at liquid calories. They just bypass all those digestive checkpoints. Boom, a rapid flood of sugar straight into your bloodstream. We're talking same ingredients, same number of calories, but a completely different story for your metabolism.
And it turns out, the simple act of chewing does way more than just break down food. It sends this critical message to your body that food is on the way. This is what triggers the release of hormones that make you feel full, like one called GLP-1, which basically tells your brain, hey, we're good, you can stop eating now. But with liquid calories, that signal is super weak or it gets missed completely. Your brain just doesn't register the meal in the same way at all.
All right, so if chewing is one major signal, what else is going on that determines how full we feel? Well, this brings us to the actual science of satiation. Yep, there's a way to measure which foods really truly satisfy our hunger, all for the same number of calories.
So way back in 1995, some researchers at the University of Sydney created something called the Satiety Index. It's pretty cool. They fed people 240-calorie portions of all different kinds of foods and then just tracked how hungry they felt afterwards. And to have a baseline, they used plain old white bread and gave it a score of 100. And this chart just shows the results so clearly. I mean, just take a look at this list for a second. The range is absolutely huge. Up at the very top, you've got things like boiled potatoes and lingfish, foods that keep you feeling full for hours. But then you go way down to the bottom and you see stuff like croissants and cake that barely make a dent in your hunger. And remember, this isn't just someone's opinion. It's a measured biological response to the exact same number of calories.
So let's zero in on the undisputed champion of this list, the humble boiled potato. It scored a whopping 323%. Just think about that. Calorie for calorie, it's over 3 times more filling than white bread. That's insane.
Now let's flip to the other end of the spectrum, the croissant. It scored a pretty dismal 47%. So for the exact same 240 calories, it's less than half as satisfying as white bread. And get this, it's about 1/7 as satisfying as that potato. Wow.
So what's the secret sauce here? What did all the most filling foods have in common? Well, the study boiled it down to 3 key things: protein, fiber, and water. Foods packed with these 3 consistently shot to the top of the list. And this is the crucial point. It's the food's composition, what it's made of, not just its calorie count, that dictates how full you're going to feel. And that brings us to protein. Because it turns out your body has this powerful kind of hidden drive for this one specific nutrient, and it has a massive influence on how much you end up eating. It's called the protein leverage hypothesis. And the idea is that your appetite has one main target: protein. And until your body gets the amount of protein it's hardwired to look for, it's just going to keep sending out hunger signals. And that causes you to eat more fats and more carbs just to try and hit that protein goal. And you can see this hypothesis playing out across an entire population. Look at this data. As the percentage of protein in the average diet slowly went down over the decades, the total number of calories people were eating just skyrocketed. They're almost perfect mirror images of each other. It's pretty wild. And this effect is incredibly sensitive. I mean, check this out. Just diluting the protein in someone's diet by a tiny 1 or 2% can drive up the total calories they eat from carbs and fats by over 14%. Your body simply will not be denied its protein target. It's gonna get it one way or another.
Okay, so we've got the physical form of our food and our body's intense drive for protein, but there's one more massive factor we haven't even touched on yet, and that's the trillions of other organisms that are literally eating your lunch.
That's right. Your gut is home to this vast ecosystem of bacteria, your microbiome, and they are in a constant tug of war with your body for the calories in your food. And who wins that tug of war? Well, that depends entirely on what you're eating.
So, your calories can take one of two very different paths. Highly processed foods, they could absorb super quickly, way up high in your digestive tract. Your body gets all that energy, sure, but your gut bacteria get absolutely nothing. On the other hand, high-fiber foods make it all the way down to your large intestine, where they become a fantastic feast for your microbiome. And here is the absolute kicker. A recent study found that when people were on a high-fiber diet, one that really enhances the microbiome, their bodies absorbed 116 times fewer calories every single day. So why is that? It's because more of that energy was going to feed their gut microbes instead of their own cells. You're literally sharing your meal. And guess what happens when you feed your microbiome? The study found it actually leads to an increase in beneficial hormones, including, you guessed it, GLP-1. Remember that guy? It's the exact same I'm full hormone that gets triggered when you chew solid food. So this is a second really powerful pathway to feeling satisfied.
Now just let that sink in for a second. Some of these really popular new weight loss drugs work by mimicking that exact same hormone. But here's the thing. You can increase this hormone completely naturally just by eating foods that nourish your gut. So after looking at the form of food, satiety, protein, and the microbiome, what does this all mean for how we should actually eat? Let's try and boil all this down into a few new rules of eating. The takeaway here is actually pretty clear. Instead of constantly fighting your biology with strict calorie counting, you can start working with it. So, you prioritize protein to hit your body's hitting target. You choose high fiber, whole foods to feed your gut and feel fuller longer. And you start focusing on the quality and form of your food, not just a number on a label. And all of this brings us to one final kind of provocative thought. The nutrition label on our food tells us about calories, fat, protein, and carbs. But it tells us absolutely nothing about satiety or protein leverage or how a food is going to interact with our microbiome. So the real question is, shouldn't we rethink that label entirely?